Welcome back. Tuesday marked something called Equal Pay Day in the U.S. That is a date that women have to work until in order to make the same amount of money men made last year. In other words, women have to work more than 15 months to earn what a man makes in 12. That is according to the National Committee on Pay Equity, which gets its data from the U.S. Census. Now, nationally, women only earn about 82 cents for every dollar a man makes. That gap is even wider when you factor in things like race. Here is something else. The disparity has hardly shrunk at all in the last 20 years. Let's show you a graph from the Pew Research Center. The gap was starting to close in the 80s. See it narrowing there, and then basically flatlined in the 2000s. That is despite the fact that more women are graduating college than men. Now, 6 years ago, Oregon passed the Pay Equity Bill. It was meant to address that gap in the state. It requires both public and private employers to ensure their employees are being paid equitably. Men and women doing the same job are supposed to be paid the same. Of course, there is a little bit of wiggle room. There are exceptions for things like education, experience level, and seniority, and it allows employees to sue if their employers aren't paying them fairly. It's been 6 years since that law was passed, so the question is, has it worked? How has it worked? Now, here's what the Oregon Secretary of State's office says about a new report on the state's government workforce.
The report did find significant pay gaps still exist within the state workforce, despite recent good faith efforts by state leaders to address these pay inequities. So there's more work to be done.
Significant pay gaps, he said. So the audit division looked at data from 2015 before the law passed and 2022 and found that women working for the state of Oregon are still being paid only 83 cents on the dollar that men are paid. That's the same as it was in 2015. People of color are also earning less than white people, about 91 cents for every dollar. In other words, a gap hadn't really changed in 7 years.
Wage gaps can have a significant impact on people's lives. For example, a woman would need to work nearly 44 years to earn the same amount a man earns in 30 years, based on the average wage gap since 1960. Although wage gaps have improved, women and people of color must still work years longer to earn the same amount of money.
Some perspective for you there. The audits team says they still have more to study so they can figure out why that pay gap exists in state government. But they suspect one reason could be that women tend to have less seniority than their male counterparts because they're often still the ones who are expected to leave work and handle things like childcare for their families. National researchers agree with that. Here's a senior researcher from the Pew Research Center.
Yes, that has something to do with it. There are social and cultural norms at work. And in an accompanying survey we did, in fact, women are much more likely to say that they feel greater responsibility to take care of family needs by a much greater margin than men.
Well, according to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, more than 1 million women are still missing from the workforce since before the pandemic, in large part because of those expectations. The number of working women is down a full percentage point since January of 2020, and overwhelmingly among parents surveyed, it is because of the need for childcare. The auditors said they weren't sure why there is still such a big gap between people of color and white workers, though. All in all, the auditors concluded that despite Oregon's pay equity law, you heard it, more work needs to be done to close that gap.